Yoshida is a worthless, hideous bum who got turned down by his lifelong crush and sank into despair. However, everything shifts when he decides to assist a homeless girl by allowing her to move in. But now she wants to compensate him with back shots every evening. It all begins on the night Yosha finally persuades his crush to have dinner with him. After staring at her melons the whole time, he gathers enough courage to ask her out. But then she admits to already having a boyfriend who can definitely hit it better than a beta simp. After realizing that she only used him for food, Yoshida goes to a bar to destroy his liver while his friend Hashimoto tries to calm him down. As Yosha refuses to be comforted, Hashimoto decides to head home because his wife is waiting. Soon after that, Yosha also starts dragging himself home, but on the way there, he spots a hottie named 𝐂𝐨𝐬𝒄𝒊𝒆 sitting under a lamppost. He immediately walks over and asks why she is out so late. So 𝐂𝐶𝐴 explains that the train stations have closed for the night. Yoshida then asks if she has a place to stay, and after saying no, 𝐂𝐶 asks to spend the night at his place. When Yosha turns her down, she offers to give him the throat 5,000 as payment, but he says he is not the type to clap street hoes. Come on man, despite that he feels bad for her. So he takes her back to his place and falls into his bed as the countless bottles of beer finally catch up to him. Then 𝐂𝐶 suddenly tries to give him a taste of her melons. He takes one look and says he is not interested. She then asks if he wants anything else, and he starts mumbling about miso soup before falling asleep. The next morning, Yoshida wakes up and almost has a heart attack when he sees 𝐂𝐶 in the kitchen because he can't remember anything from last night. 𝐂𝐶 tells him what happened, but he remains scared and asks if he did anything unholy to her. She initially teases him, but after saying that he managed to keep it in his pants, 𝐂𝐶 serves the miso soup and explains everything that happened in detail until he remembers seeing her dump truck under the lamppost. Just as he tries the miso soup, she says she knows about God rejecting him because he kept mumbling about it in his sleep. 𝐂𝐶 then offers to make him feel better with her melons. Nice. But when Yosha says no, she takes her jacket off and asks if they are too small for him. He then notes that God's were a lot bigger, but after she educates him about cup sizes, he realizes that they are actually similar. The next moment, she tries to rile him up again. So he asks why she is so persistent and says he could have used force if he were anything like you creeps watching this. After throwing her hands over his shoulder, 𝐂𝐶 asks why he is trying so hard to be different when every other guy gladly railed her cakes on the first night. At this moment, Yoshida senses his magnum about to rip out of his jeans, but he calmly pushes 𝐂𝐶 back and says he wants to know everything about her. She then gives him an identification card and says that she ran away 6 months ago. Yosha tells her to go back because her parents are probably worried sick, but she says it's pointless because they are better off without her. He gets surprised that she has survived alone for so long and asks how she did it. So she says she basically stayed with guys who agreed to accept her kitty as payment. This causes Yoshida to realize that she is slowly becoming a succubus. He suggests getting a real job, but she says it still won't be enough to get her own place. After thinking about it, he agrees to let her stay as his maid, but threatens to send her back to the streets if she flashes her jugs in his face again. The next day at work, Yoshida tells Hashimoto about 𝐂𝐶𝐴, and Hashimoto immediately tells him to take her back to the lamppost. He warns Yoshida that his life is already bad enough as it is to be playing daddy to a gizzy gobbler. Despite this, Yosha convinces himself that it's the right thing to do for 𝐂𝐶𝐴. Much later, he gets back and sees that she is making something for dinner, but he already bought food, so they eat that instead. Afterwards, he grabs the ashtray to have a smoke on the balcony, and when she notes that all the other guys never cared about her lungs when she lived with them, Yosha tells her to set better standards for herself. The next day, she wakes up to start the day's chores, and Yosha notices that her back hurts from sleeping on the floor. After also seeing that she barely has enough clothes to keep her plots covered, he takes her to the mall to get clothes and a futon. She gets upset because she can't pay him back, but he reminds her that all she has to do is be his maid. Days later at the office, Hashimoto tells Yoshida that the ladies are all gossiping about him being in a relationship because he looks a lot better than usual. He then promises to keep Yoshida's little secret safe because they would get him arrested if anyone found out. On the next morning, while having breakfast, 𝐂𝐶 notices that Yosha hasn't shaved, and when she asks why, he says he only does it when he feels like it. After she says it's probably why God rejected him, he busts out the shaver and decides to take self-care seriously. Days later, he decides to get her a skincare package as well. And on the way out, he spots a phone store and asks if she needs one after she explains how she threw her last phone away to avoid contact with her folks. He decides to buy her a new one, but she refuses, saying that he has already spent way too much on her. When they finally get back home, he says she can read some of his manga if she ever gets bored, but then he notices a sudden change in her mood and asks what happened. She immediately starts smiling again and says it's nothing, but he knows she is hiding something and continues asking about it. Eventually, she asks why he is so nice to her and says no one has ever treated her the way he does. She then sits beside him and promises to try being a bit more open with him. After he tells her to take her time, she suddenly grabs his hand and asks if there is truly no other way she can repay his kindness. He immediately pulls away and laughs it off before saying she only has to be his maid. The following evening at the office, 𝐂𝐨 calls a co-worker named 𝐵𝒖𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 to tell her about the bugs he found in the code she's developing. He then tells her to stay back after work hours to fix it, and after hours of typing, she finally fixes it and thanks 𝐂𝐨 before asking why he is always looking out for her. After 𝐂𝐨 explains that she doesn't have the brain power to handle projects alone, she asks if he is seeing someone because she also noticed that he started paying more attention to his looks. When he tells her about the brutal rejection from God, she gets excited for some reason and asks him to go drinking with her, which he gladly accepts. Hours later, he returns home and apologizes to 𝐂𝐴 for being late. So she takes the dinner she cooked to the freezer and gives him another beer. The following afternoon, Yoshida takes Hashimoto to the phone store during their lunch break to get something for 𝐂𝐴. Upon hearing this, Hashimoto warns him about getting too attached to her, but Yoshida claims it's not even possible because he only likes older baddies like Goat. After returning to the office, Yoshida starts checking his watch every 10 seconds to count down until he can get home to 𝐂𝐴, until Hashimoto tells him to stop acting so excited since he claims not to like her. Just then, Goku asks to see 𝐂𝐨 after work, completely catching him off guard. When they finally close for the day, Hashimoto tells him to redeem the aura he lost the other night. However, when they both get to a restaurant, 𝐂𝐨 forgets how to speak, as he never expected a second chance with his lifelong crush. While she obliterates an entire glass of beer, he obsessively watches the massive jugs on her chest until she notices. He immediately starts drinking his own beer to avoid looking like a creep, but then she asks if he likes the view, causing him to choke on the beer. He then finally says that it's weird for her to ask him out after the rejection, so she suggests that they ask each other questions to lighten the mood. 𝐂𝐨 immediately asks why she asked him out, but instead of answering, she asks if he is seeing someone else. He replies that he's still very single, but she tells him to stop the cab because she has noticed how close he is with Miss Hay and how he recently started taking care of himself. 𝐂𝐨 then explains that he has no feelings for Miss Hay and admits that he still wants only her, despite the fact that she has been his boss for the past 5 years. He then repeats his question and says she shouldn't even care since she rejected him. So God admits that she just didn't like the idea of him already dating someone else after claiming to be in love with her. After apologizing for making him think it was a real date, she tells him to ask another question, and he asks for her cup size without hesitation. Boy, she calmly answers, but the response leaves him in a state of shock until he returns home. Sue notices his mood and asks, but he pretends to be okay. However, after she continues asking for the truth, he decides to tell her about the date. He further admits to being upset that he couldn't take God home again, so 𝐂𝐴 hugs him and tells him that she has already prepared a bath to make him feel better. Afterwards, he eats the soup she made for dinner before giving her the new phone and watching as she gets excited. Days later, Sue has a dream where she recalls one of the guys she used to stay with who basically used her like that special gooning sock in your dresser. After waking up, she wonders if Yoshida's nuts are defective because he has still not made a move on her despite having every chance to do so. Later, 𝐂𝐨 tells her to fix her hair before leaving for work. But this leaves her feeling even more confused than before, because she has no idea if he is grooming her to be the perfect girlfriend or just said it cause he truly cares. Hours later in the office, a co-worker named Endu asks 𝐂𝐨 if he is actually giving up his work trip, but 𝐂𝐨 gets confused by the question. Endao then explains that he has never turned it down before and asks if it's because he has something special planned with Goat or another chick. Hey, upon hearing this, Miss Heima also gets curious and asks who this mysterious baddie is, but 𝐂𝐨 explains that he just has a package coming in around the same time as the trip, so Endao decides to stop interrogating him. Much later, Miss Heima asks 𝐂𝐨 to go see a movie with her, and just as he's about to say no, she buys tickets and tells him to meet her downstairs. On his way there, he almost bumps into Goat and eventually sends a text to 𝐂𝐴, telling her about the movie so she won't wait like the last time. Hours later, 𝐂𝐴 gets started on dinner, but she also can't shake the thought of Yoshida being on a date with some chick, so she heads out to find him. Around the same time, he and Miss He leave the theater, and he admits to loving romantic movies because they promote the idea of finding one's soulmate. As they continue talking about it, Miss Heima suddenly says that she has already found the guy she is destined to be with. So 𝐂𝐨 tells her to do everything in her power to be with him. All of a sudden, she lunges her melons at him, and 𝐂𝐴, who is secretly watching them, runs off, thinking she is his new girl. However, 𝐂𝐨 pushes Miss Heima away, and she fakes a smile to hide how embarrassed she feels. After thanking him for agreeing to see the movie together, she turns to leave, but suddenly stops and asks what he would do if she were his soulmate. 𝐂𝐨 then tells her to go easy on the coke next time, and also turns to leave. Minutes later, Yoshida gets home and finds the apartment empty, so he runs out and desperately starts searching for Sao. Meanwhile, she has just found somewhere to sit in a nearby park. After failing to convince herself that she doesn't have any feelings for Yoshida, Sue starts bawling her eyes out. Minutes later, Miss Hema spots her and decides to stay back to make sure she is okay. After learning about Sue's escape from home, Miss He admits to also doing the same back in her prime, and asks Sue if she has a good relationship with her parents. Sue then admits that her parents are actually pretty chill, but apparently that was not enough to stop her from becoming a professional creamer. When Sue also admits that she might have feelings for a certain someone, Miss Huma proceeds to give a lecture about love and convinces Sao to confess her feelings, regardless of what the guy might say. The pep talk manages to reignite Sao's spark, but as she gets up to leave, Yoshida finds them. He immediately pulls Sao aside to ask for an explanation, but as she tries to tell him what happened, Miss He asks Yosha if he is her dad. After he says no, she notices a weird tension between them and guesses that it must be related to what Sue told her. So she wishes them luck and heads out. Much later, they both get back to Yoshida's place, but as he tries to hang up his clothes, Sue tries to talk to him with nothing but plot armor on. Beautiful. Yosha immediately tells her to put on some real clothes, but she refuses and says he has to hear her out first. When she suddenly grabs him and asks if he truly doesn't want to give her back shots, he reminds her of his threat to toss her back to the streets. Despite this, she gets even closer and holds little Johnny before repeating her question. After admitting that he has the same response as every other guy when they get fresh kitty for free, he pushes her back. Sayu then says she had actually tried to work for all the other guys she stayed with. However, since there was a huge risk involved with harboring a runaway like her, she ended up paying with her plots to keep them from chasing her away. This is why she can't wrap her head around the fact that he is easily taking on all the risk and even spending on her without even asking for some sloppy top. She suddenly gets close again and begs him to use her kitty, because at least then she won't feel like a leech. But Yosha hugs her instead. He then admits that she is a good-looking girl, but says he is reserving his magnum for someone he actually loves. Minutes later, she finally agrees to put on some clothes. So Yoshida further explains that he doesn't just see her as a freeloader. He admits that life became a lot less depressing since she started living with him, and he also learned how to take care of himself, all because of her company. The next moment, Sue starts bawling her eyes out, so Yoshida gives her a moment to let it all out before saying that he only wants her to continue helping him feel good about himself. Sawu then agrees and hugs him. A couple of nights later, Sao asks Yoshida if she can get a job, and when he easily says yes, she gets surprised. He then explains that it would be good for her to finally get an active life besides being his dishwasher. The next day, she starts working at a convenience store, and a chick named Asami acts like she is some next level baddie for dropping out of school to work minimum wage jobs. After work hours, Asami learns that they actually live close to each other and asks Sue if she can come over, but Sayu is not sure if Yoshida would approve. Curious, Asami asks if Yosha is her boyfriend, but Sayu explains that he is just like a brother to her. Despite this, Asami insists on staying over and meeting him. So a couple of minutes later, Sa sends Yoshida a text telling him that Asami is already in the apartment with her. As Yosha tries to respond, Miss Hema tries to look and asks about Sao. Hashimoto then asks why he told her about it, but this causes Miss Hema to realize that Hashimoto knew about Sayu before her, so she gets pissed at Yoshida for not saying anything. Meanwhile, Gat watches the entire thing from her table and gets curious. Much later, Yosha finally gets back home and meets Asami, who immediately starts roasting him for not being able to afford a better apartment. After she introduces herself, Yosha and Sayu cook up a lie about being friends since they were little. Sue then heads into the kitchen to make dinner, while Yoshida continues telling Asami fake stories about how they grew up together. Minutes later, Sao serves what should have been dinner for her and Yoshida, and Asami gobbles the whole thing down like a shameless glutton before complimenting Sayu on her cooking skills. Much later, Yosha gets tired of the obnoxious baddie vibes and tells Asami to go home, but she asks him to escort her outside because a hottie shouldn't be walking alone at night. Sayu tries to join them, but Asami stops her and says it's a man's job before heading out with Yoshida and telling him to drop the lies because there's no way he is just friends with Sayu. After taking a moment to consider his next moves carefully, Yosha admits that they are both strangers who have decided to live together. He then tells Asami that he had actually wanted Sayu to be the one to tell her everything, but Asami says he already passed the test. After she tells him not to worry about following her home, he tells her to keep coming over to see Sayu whenever she wants. Asami then tells him that Sayu is really good at hiding her feelings before heading out. The following evening, Yosha tries to text Sayu to let her know he just finished work, but God suddenly asks for another date. Minutes later, they get to the restaurant, but Yosha gets distracted as he tries to figure out what Asami meant about Sawu hiding her feelings. When God eventually recalls his attention, he almost gets pissed at her for wasting his time, but her massive jugs work their magic on him. She then notes that he seems to be a lot more distracted than usual, and asks if it's because he is finally seeing someone else. Curious, Yosha asks why she cares so much about who he might be seeing, and says he won't respond to any questions until she answers his. After dropping her milkers right in his face to scramble what's left of his brain cells, God admits that she actually likes him. By then, Sao has just finished making dinner for both of them and gets excited to see Yosha. But then she sees his text about already being on a date with Gim back in the restaurant. God just admitted that she has never dated before, and after telling her to stop the cap, Yoshida asks why she rejected him if she actually likes him. She then claims that she could sense something going on with him, and knew that it would not be the right time to get into a relationship. Once again, Yosha tells her to stop the cap, but then Goku says she is ready to do anything to prove that she actually likes him when he suddenly asks if she would take back shots from him. Or she freezes for a minute, so he admits that it was just a joke. The next moment, she claims to be a virgin, and Yoshida immediately apologizes for being insensitive before asking if she is telling the truth. When she says yes, and explains that she has never had the chance to ride a 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐚𝐭𝐨, Yosha notices how embarrassed she feels talking about it and realizes that she is actually telling the truth. He then tells her to ask him out whenever she feels it's the right time. She senses the slight anger in his voice and asks why he is upset. So he reminds her that she has been playing with his emotions this entire time. After apologizing to him, she promises to make the move next time, but says she also has to know who he has been texting recently. Minutes later, Sayu recalls a traumatic memory from her past and throws up the food she ate. She then gets a text from Yoshida saying that he is bringing God home. Naturally, Sayu gets heartbroken and thinks he finally got lucky with her. But then Yosha sends another text explaining that Goku wants to see her. On the way to his place, he gives Goku the same stupid story about being close with Sao since he was little, and when they finally show up, Goku introduces herself to Sao with snacks. Minutes later, she learns the truth about their relationship and is shocked by the fact that Yoshida was bold enough to let Su stay with him. She then asks Su if he has ever tried anything unholy with her, and Sayu also admits to being surprised that he has never done anything. While talking, both Got and Yosha notice that Sayu is acting a bit strange, but when Goku asks about it, she claims it's nothing. Got asks again, and she insists on being okay. But Yosha senses an awkward tension in the room, so he heads to the bathroom to give them some space. When Sao suddenly starts avoiding eye contact, God asks if she has something to get off her chest and offers to speak with her in private if that will make her feel better. Just then, Yoshida walks out. So Su asks him to get groceries, and he quickly understands that they need some alone time. However, before leaving, he asks if she will be okay staying alone with Goat, and after she says it won't be a problem, he heads out. God then asks Su about everything that has led to her staying with Yoshida right now, and after she explains everything, God asks why she left home in the first place. Su refuses to answer this, so God asks when she plans to leave Yoshida's place. Meanwhile, Yoshida, who is still on his way to the store, runs into Miss Hema, who then claims that she went to see a movie. When Yosha says that the theater is a long way back from where she is currently standing, Miss He claims she just wanted to walk towards his neighborhood since she had nothing else to do. She then asks about Sao, and after he explains that she sent him on an errand, Miss Hema offers to walk with him to the store. Back in the apartment, Sao has once again refused to answer, so God explains that she can't keep running from the truth. She also tells Sayu that leaving home and selling Kitty doesn't change the fact that she is still way too young and has to deal with whatever she is running from to actually grow. At that moment, she hesitates, thinking she might have gone too far, but Sayu actually thanks her for being truthful. Sayu then decides to come clean about all the other guys she has been with. And after admitting that she felt good when they accepted her cakes as payment, she notes that Yoshida has been the only exception. God suddenly laughs and says she always expected Yoshida to be a good guy, before expressing how happy she is that they ran into each other. However, after also telling Sao that there is nothing wrong with accepting his kindness, God warns her to be careful because Yosha can still get into trouble for letting her stay with him. Sayu then promises that she will eventually leave and go back to face what she has been running from, because she also knows that Yosha is putting himself at risk by letting her stay. Upon hearing this, God hugs Su and tells her to take as long as she needs, and Sayu immediately starts bawling her eyes out. Meanwhile, Yoshida has just finished getting groceries with Miss Miss Heima. But as he prepares to leave, she suddenly asks to spend the night at his place. When Yoshida says he can only let his girlfriend spend the night, Miss Heima reminds him of Sao, but he says she is someone he is just helping out. Miss Heima then brings up Got, and when Yosha tries to avoid talking about her, Miss Heima tells him to drop the act because she already knows that God is at his place. He immediately asks how she knew, so Miss He admits that she started stalking them after they left the restaurant. After apologizing for it, she says it's not fair that he always hides things about God from her, and Yosha freezes, not sure of how to respond to her breakdown. By then Sayu has finally stopped crying, so Goku asks if she has any questions, and Sayu immediately asks if she loves Yoshida. God hesitates for a moment, but after Sayu says Yosha is obsessed with her, she admits to also having feelings for him and says she fell for him when he first showed up at the office. Upon hearing this, Sayu decides to help her take things to the next level with Yoshida. Meanwhile, Miss Heima suddenly claims that she was only asking all those questions because she thought Yoshida had chased Sao away to have a good time with her. After he says he would never do something like that, Miss Heima asks if he truly loves God, and he admits to it without hesitating for a second. Miss Heima then asks why he is letting his desire to help Sayu get in the way of his feelings for God. Yoshida gets surprised by this question and asks if she wants him to kick Sayu out, but Miss Heima says she just wants to know what his priorities are. After stopping herself from crashing out, she accuses him of not actually loving God, because if he did, he wouldn't find it so hard to choose between her and Sayu. The next moment, she asks if he has feelings for Sayu, and after he says no, she gets up close to tell him that he is way too nice for his own good. She then steps back and apologizes for doing too much before leaving. Minutes later, Yoshida returns home and sees God putting some makeup on Su. When they ask for his thoughts, his brain reverts to factory settings, so they tell him to take a course on compliments. Afterwards, he escorts God out, and while walking together, she promises to call the cops if he ever tries to give Sayu what she has been asking for. When she claims to have noticed some kind of attraction from Seu earlier on, Yoshida gets worried about his next move, but God tells him to relax because she completely trusts him. Days later, while working, Sayu spots a familiar name on the register and wonders where she knows the person from. However, when Yaguchi walks in, she recognizes him as one of the guys who folded her like a pretzel when she was still in the streets. Yaguchi also recognizes her and tries to talk, but she ignores him and acts like he is a stranger to avoid facing reality. Just as he asks why she changed her name from Miyuki, Asami walks in and tells him to get back to work. He then tries to tell her who Sayu really is, but when Sayu stops him, Asami realizes that something bad happened between them. So she closes herself in with Sayu. After telling Sao that she doesn't have to talk about anything she doesn't want to, Asami promises to help if she ever needs anything. Hours later, Su heads out and spots Yaguchi, who has apparently been waiting for her. She tries to ignore him again, but he starts praising her for being such a proud hoe, because she is obviously staying with another guy and giving him the gawk 5,000 every night. Then he suddenly asks to see her new place. Sayu refuses and says Yoshida wouldn't allow it. She then turns to leave, but Yaguchi threatens to tell Asami and the store manager everything about her. Terrified, she asks if he only wants to see the place, and after Yaguchi promises to keep his hands to himself, Sayu sends Yoshida a text to let him know. Minutes later, they get to the apartment, and after taking a look around, Yaguchi asks Sayu if she's already clapping for Yoshida. She then explains the deal Yoshida struck with her, but Yaguchi refuses to believe that anyone would give up an opportunity to get freaky for free. When he suddenly moves closer and tries to relive the glory days, Sayu resists, but he continues insisting, so she smacks him across the face. This causes Yaguchi to get pissed off, so he decides to force her. So immediately starts crying and thinks this will be the best option, because things could get really bad for Yosha if Yaguchi exposes who she really is. She then decides to let Yaguchi do what he wants, but tells him to make it quick. Luckily, Yosha rushes in at that moment and stops him before checking on Sao. He then kicks Yaguchi out and demands to know what he was trying to do. Yaguchi proudly says that he was gonna blow her back out before asking Yosha why he is trying to save a throat goat who doesn't want to be saved. Yosha almost loses it, but after he manages to control himself, Yaguchi asks if he really plans to just let her stay with him for free. Yoshida responds that she can stay as long as she wants, and Yaguchi calls him stupid because he will definitely go broke or end up in jail for trying to play daddy. Yoshida then says he is just trying to be a responsible adult by controlling his magnum. Yaguchi gets tired of the lecture and decides to leave, but Yosha wants him to stay away from Sayu. After saying that Yoshida's wannabe priest attitude is already a huge turnoff, and Yaguchi agrees to stay away and leaves. Yoshida then considers everything Su has been through and starts bawling his eyes out. Moments later, he heads back inside to check on her again, and she explains how scared she felt in the moment, despite knowing that Yaguchi already did it countless times before. After hugging her, Yosha says there's nothing wrong with feeling a little scared, but insists that Sao has to start treating herself better so guys like Yaguchi won't get close. He also promises to always protect her, even if the entire world is against him. The next day at the store, Asami notices Sao spacing out while stacking shelves, so she asks if something happened with Yaguchi. Sayu tells her not to worry about it and fakes a smile, but Asami gets upset and tells Sue to stop hiding what she truly feels. She then walks straight to Yaguchi and demands to know what he did to Sue. Yaguchi easily admits that he wanted to take her to Pound Town, but she rejected. However, Asami can tell there is more to the story, so she asks for details. Yaguchi then admits that he tried to force her, and Asami responds with a slap that resets his brain. She then says he has to apologize to Sayu, but a customer shows up, so Asami stays back to work the register. Yaguchi then takes the opportunity to apologize to Sayu and admits that he actually regrets what he did. When she asks why he hasn't told Asami the full truth about her past, he reminds her that he promised to keep quiet about it if she showed him Yoshida's place. She gets surprised that a usually shameless creep like him actually has some weird sense of honor. After saying that she's not upset about what happened, she warns him to keep his baby shrimp to himself because she won't be so weak the next time he tries to get lucky. When Yaguchi suddenly says Yosha is stupid for teaching her self-respect without even trying to make out, Sue gets happy knowing that she finally found a good guy. Hours later, she starts heading home with Asami and gets a text from Yosha explaining that he will be spending the night at the office to finish up some work. Asami sees the text and responds that she will be staying over at his place to look after Sao. After Yoshida thanks her, she tells Sue that it won't be a problem since her parents are not at home. However, they do need to stop by at her place so she can grab some stuff. Several minutes later, Sue is in shock as she struggles to believe that Asami lives in a mega mansion. After finally coming out, Asami explains how her filthy rich parents barely have any time for her, which is why she got a job at the store to keep herself busy. Much later, Sue decides to come clean about her life and everything that led her to this point. And luckily, Asami still decides to stick with her. So they spend the night talking about their lives. At a certain point, Asami tells Sayu that she was almost thrown out of the house for trying to become an author. After also talking about a story she heard from her dad, she takes Sayu's hand and tells her to stop running from her mistakes because they made her the person she is now. Upon hearing this, Sayu starts bawling her eyes out. So Asami holds back her tears to remind Sayu that she will always be here to support her. The next day, Yoshida returns and says he clocked out earlier than usual since he spent most of the night working. After telling Sayu not to worry about dinner, he apologizes for being absent after everything that happened with Yaguchi. But Sao tells him not to worry about it. She then thanks him for helping her learn self-respect and says she has started thinking about her future again. Hearing this warms Yoshida's heart, so he pats her head and promises to help with anything she needs. Later on at the store, Asami tells Sayu to see if Yoshida is cool with letting her come over again. And after Sue says he is cool with it, she decides to go work on the shelves. The next moment, Asami spots a car pulling up and tells Sue that the same car has been showing up recently, but no one ever comes out to buy anything. Hours later, they get back home, but Asami quickly gets fed up with a problem she has been trying to solve. So Sue takes a look and says it's actually pretty easy. Embarrassed, Asami comes up with a bunch of excuses to make up for the fact that she is just slow. Sawu tries to get it into her thick, empty skull, but Asami quickly gets tired and decides to take a break when she says the course is super important for her dream of becoming an author. Sawu recalls her promise to start thinking about her future and gets lost in thought. Asami notices and asks if she is okay, but she claims to have just been thinking of what to make for dinner. So Asami offers to help her figure it out. Meanwhile, Yoshida just got a text while working at the office, so he reads it while Miss Haima watches him and starts getting jealous. To make matters worse, Goku shows up and asks Yoshida for help with something, while obviously flirting with him. As soon as God heads back to her table, Miss Haima runs over and asks if they can eat together. Much later, they get to a restaurant, and after seeing that Miss Haima actually has baddie potential, God tells her to go easy on the junk food if she actually wants to grow some yams. God then asks if there is something she wants to talk about, and Miss Haima immediately asks for her thoughts about Yosha with a stern face that almost makes God choke on her salad. After God claims that she only notices the recent change in his appearance and the fact that he seems to have a new girl around, Miss Haima asks if she knows about Sayu. God quickly clocks that she knows and decides to tell her about the talk she had with Sao at Yoshida's place the other day. When Miss Haima asks if she is bothered about how Sayu probably feels for Yosha, God claims she doesn't actually care about that, which in this case is Yoshida. But God insists that it's pointless because she obviously can't control Sayu or Yoshida's emotions. Upon hearing this, Miss Haima flips out and calls her a weakling for not seizing Yosha's heart by force. Goku then tells her to relax and explains that they need to wait and see if Yosha has any feelings for Sayu. However, this confuses Miss Haima, so she asks God if she truly even loves Yoshida. God then responds that her love for him is the exact reason she is not acting like an obsessed lunatic. Hours later, Yoshida gets a text from Sayu about dinner, but as he prepares to leave, Miss Haima suddenly asks to go see a movie again. After noticing that he is fighting the urge to reject her, she asks for his digits instead and says it's only fair since he already gave them to God and Sue. Yosha accepts but warns her that he is extremely bad at texting. All of a sudden, she loses it and calls him out, claiming he only ever does what he wants without caring what anyone else feels. Confused, Yosha asks if she is projecting some weird insecurity on him, so Miss He takes a second to cool off before admitting that she has feelings for him. After returning the phone, she says says it's cool if he doesn't want to text, but he promises to do so, obviously feeling bad for her. She then asks if they can still go see a movie later. And after he says yes, she admits that it feels good whenever he does what she asks, like a good little simp. Later that night, Soo gets excited to tell Yosha about 𝐂𝐨𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆's upcoming exams and how they spent most of the day planning dinner, but Yosha can barely hear her over his own thoughts. She eventually notices this and asks if he's okay, but he tells her not to worry about it and suggests that she continue making dinner with 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 since she seems to have enjoyed it. Days later, Yoshida notices that Sayu has been doing a lot of extra work around the house, so he tries to help, but she takes him back to bed and reminds him that it's her job. When he complains about being idle and tries to help again, she pushes him down and accidentally falls on his lightsaber. Luckily, Yosha still sees her as a poor little refugee, so he casually gets up and heads into the bath to clean up while she fantasizes about what could have been. Minutes later, she finds his graduation album, and after looking through his old pictures, she realizes that he has never had a chance with the ladies. When he finally finishes with the bath and sees her looking at one particular photo, he explains that the chick was actually his first girlfriend who broke up with him because he didn't know how to deal with dating older women back then. As he heads towards the balcony, Soo suddenly stops him to say something, but his face causes her heart to flutter, so she tells him to stop smoking. He laughs at this, thinking she is messing with him, while she continues staring at him with a suspicious look on her face. At the store the following day, Yaguchi swaps shifts with 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 and spots the same car that always drives close to the store. After it pulls in for the first time, the driver opens the door for a guy named Kazuto, and Sayu immediately hides behind the counter. Yaguchi quickly helps her sneak to the back, and while she tells 𝐂𝐵𝒄𝒊𝒆 that Kazuto is her brother, Kazuto meets Yaguchi at the counter and starts asking about Sayu. Minutes later, Yaguchi joins the girls in the back room and says they don't have to worry about Kazuto anymore. After also admitting that he hates rich brats, Yaguchi tells Soo that her life on the run might be ending soon because Kazuto was pretty serious about finding her. Minutes later, Sayu starts heading home and zones out as she considers what Yaguchi said, until Yosha sends her a text explaining that he has to work late again. Hours later, Sayu goes to the store to shop for groceries. But Miss Heima suddenly shows up and says she was on a solo movie date at the theater. All of a sudden, Sayu hides behind her and begs her for help because Kazuto is still outside looking for her. Miss Heima agrees without asking questions and waits until Kazuto leaves before taking Sayu to a karaoke place to continue hiding. After thanking her for the help, Soo decides to text Yosha, but she suddenly freezes and worries that he might get concerned and abandon his work. Miss Heima notices this and offers to help, so Soo lets her write the text instead. After checking with Soo to make sure it's okay, she sends it to Yoshida, who has just finished with the project he has been working on. Shortly after this, Miss Heima decides to take a break from traumatizing poor Sayu with her horrible voice. When she tells Soo to pick a song, Sayu refuses and says karaoke is for losers who spend too much time in the movies. Miss Heima notices the concerned look in Sayu's eye, so she sits beside her and asks if she's okay. After also making sure that Sayu didn't commit some major crime back home, Miss Heima asks if she has considered going back home. Sayu says she has, and when Miss Heima asks why she is still buying groceries for Yoshida, Soo explains that she intends to keep doing her part for him until she decides to go home. Miss Heima then says that Yoshida wouldn't mind if she takes a day off, before also warning that her actions going forward will also affect him because they have grown attached to each other. Just as Miss Heima reminds Sayu that she doesn't have a lot of time on her hands, Yoshida walks in and asks why they had to choose the very last booth. After Miss Hiei claims they preferred this one, Yosha helps Sayu with the bags so they can head home. As he starts asking her about what they are having for dinner, Miss Heima watches and wishes she was Sayu, but then Yosha asks if she wants to follow them home for dinner. She says no, despite actually wanting it, so Yoshida thanks her for helping with Sayu and tries to pay the bill. Just then, Soo says he's doing the same thing that always pisses her off. Yoshida then offers to see a movie with her when he gets the chance. After Miss Hiei tells them to get home safe, they head out. But she suddenly drops to the ground in tears because Yoshida has never given her the same level of attention he gives Soo. Meanwhile, Sayu has just asked Yoshida if he wants to spend a little time doing something for her. Just then, he sees a poster for a festival and offers to go with her. The following night, Yoshida is shocked by how good she looks in a yukata, so he averts his gaze to keep his magnum under control. When they reach the festival venue, Sayu realizes that he has barely looked at her, so she asks for his opinion on her outfit. Left with no escape, he feasts his eyes and admits that she looks incredible. The next moment, she subtly asks if it makes her look better than good, but Yosha barely hears the question and asks her to repeat it. However, Sayu tells him not to worry because she already knows that his answer would break her heart. After spotting some of the locals with cotton candy, she tells Yosha that she has never actually tried it, so he decides to buy her very first cotton candy. Moments later, she takes a bite and decides to feed some to him, but Yosha gets a little weirded out by this. Regardless, he ends up eating from her hands and prays he never has to do that again, while Sayu deludes herself into thinking she actually has a shot with him. When a stranger suddenly bumps into Sayu, Yoshida grabs her hand to keep her from falling, but she quickly uses that opportunity to continue holding hands with him, claiming she might get lost if he leaves her. Much later, they both watch the fireworks together, and while Sayu Sayu focuses on the beautiful explosions, Yoshida drifts into his thoughts as he wonders what life would be like if he hadn't met her that night. After a couple more minutes of imaginary scenarios, he realizes that she isn't holding his hand anymore and worries that she might be lost. Luckily, she just wanted to toss something, so she takes his hand again and asks if he was worried. After Yosha agrees to it, they continue watching the fireworks, but then Yosha suddenly asks if she will really be leaving him. He then stops himself from saying something that might trigger more emotions between them, but Sao already feels them. After he tries to head out with her, but she stops him and says she gave different names to the other guys she slept with. For some reason, she felt safe the moment they met, which is why she told him her real name. She then asks why she suddenly popped that question minutes ago, but Yosha pats her head to avoid saying something that might lead to a surprise kiss. The next moment, she asks if he would have taken her home and smashed if she were as old as Got. But before he can respond, she tells him not to bother, so they head home. The next morning, Yosha hears someone at the door and quickly gets up to answer, expecting it to be a delivery. However, as soon as he opens the door, Kazuto asks for Sao and says he wants to take her home. When he tells her to get her stuff, she refuses and tells him that she doesn't want to leave Yoshida. Kazuto then asks if she has any idea how worried he has been for the last few months. He further explains how he spent almost every day searching for her and getting scared that she might have run into a psychotic creep. Sao then tells him that Yosha keeps her safe from all that, but Kazuto refuses to hear another word of this and says that Yosha is definitely one of those creeps. This causes Sayu to get pissed off, so she defends Yoshida, claiming that he would never take advantage of her. Eventually, he offers to answer any questions Kazuto has. Kazuto then asks if they have been making creamy pies in Yoshida's bed, and after they both say no, he thanks Yoshida for not smashing his sister. When Kazuto says their mom has been worried sick, Sawu immediately tells him to stop the cap because their mother has never cared about her. Kazuto then explains that after Sawu ran away, her school teachers started asking questions about her whereabouts, and their mom initially managed to keep them at bay by claiming that Sawu had locked herself away. Eventually, the lies stopped working, and everyone started to believe that their mother had locked Sayu inside the house. After listening to all of this, Yosha asks Kazuto if that is the only reason he came for Sayu, but Kazuto starts by admitting that their mother is actually a selfish maniac who doesn't really care about Sayu. He further explains that he actually wants to take her back home for the sake of protecting the family, so Yosha asks him to give Sayu some time to think about everything. Kazuto then asks to talk with Sayu for a couple of minutes and promises not to drag her into his car, so Yosha accepts. While Kazuto waits outside for Sayu, Yoshida wonders how he can assure her that everything will be okay. After hugging Yosha, Sayu follows Kazuto to his car so they can talk in private. Kazuto then admits that Yoshida seems to be a pretty chill guy since he protects her like a stepdad. However, he tells So that she has to come back because their mother has gotten a lot worse than she was right before Sue decided to skip town. After taking a moment to think, Sue admits that life on the run has been a lot more difficult than she imagined. She also conveniently leaves out the part where she sold her kitty for a bed and only tells Kazuto that she needs more time to think about her future plans before following him back home. Upon hearing this, Kazuto admits to feeling impressed that she is freely speaking her mind, so he promises to buy her at least another week by lying to their mom. Much later, Asami shows up and gets upset to hear that Sayu will be leaving soon. So comforts her and says she wants to tell her and Yosha the full truth about why she ran away from home. Sayu had always been on bad terms with her mom, and as the years went on, their bad relationship started affecting Saw's performance in school. She eventually became the loner no one talked to, but that all changed when a girl named Yuyuko became her friend and restored her hope in humanity. Soon after their friendship began, a bunch of bullies started messing with Yuyuko, and when Sayu asked why they were always troubling her, Yuyuko reminded Sayu of the basketball player she had rejected. Apparently, every chick in school wanted his gizzy, and because Sayu rejected him, they decided to take their anger out on Yuyuko. Confused, Sao asked why they were not approaching her instead. So Yuyuko explained that while Sao was very attractive, she was always treated like the ugly wannabe, who only became friends with Sayu to gain some aura. This caused Sayu to lose control of her emotions, and after she told Yuyuko that she was the only friend that mattered to her, Yuyuko assured her that they would be okay, probably thinking that the bullies would get tired and find a new nerd to mess with. Several days later, Sue was on her way to the ladies' room when she heard the bullies talking about Yuyuko and laughing. She immediately rushed in and found Yuyuko drenched in piss water, so she decided to take matters into her own fists. When Yuyuko tried to stop her, she insisted that they had to stand up for themselves, and after doing so, Sayu was convinced that the bullying would finally stop. However, just a few days after this, she headed up to the roof for the usual lunch chat with Yuyuko and found her standing over the edge. Sayu immediately tried to get her back inside, but Yuyuko started talking about how she should have never tried to be her friend. Sayu was surprised to hear this, but kept trying to convince her that jumping was the wrong move. However, after telling Sayu not to blame herself, Yuyuko jumped, and despite knowing what had already happened, Sayu walked over to the edge and was horrified by what was left of Yuyuko's body. Naturally, she stopped going to school and news reporters flooded her house every day, hoping to get answers from her. When she finally decided to come out, her mom blamed her for acting like she was the cause of everything they were going through. And this final straw made her decide that it was time to hit the streets when her mom suddenly asked if she had actually caused Yuyuko's demise. Sayu's heart shattered into pieces, but she mustered enough courage to finally call her mom a selfish loser who only cared about herself. Just as she was about to run off, Kazuto returned, so she told him about everything, and he actually agreed with her decision to get away. After hugging her, he gave her money for a hotel and told her to call whenever she wanted to. But after weeks in painful isolation, Sue decided to experience true homelessness. She threw her phone away to avoid communication from Kazuto and found her very first customer soon after. So she continued selling her plots for a bed until Yoshida found her. After listening to all this, Yosha thanks Sayu for trusting him with something so sensitive. And Asami also commends her on surviving something so traumatic and hugs her. Much later, Sayu falls asleep. So Asami joins Yoshida on the balcony and asks if he has any plans for her. When Yoshida says it's already too late for him to do anything, Asami tells him to find a way to help Sayu because her family is obviously not healthy enough to help her heal from everything she has already been through. The next day at the office, Yoshida tells Hashimoto and Miss Heima about Kazuto, and after they both agree that it would be best for Sayu to return home, Hashimoto notices that Yoshida seems worried about something. When he asks about it, Yoshida simply states that Sayu has a bad relationship with her family, and Hashimoto insists that going home is her best option since Kazuto is already on her side. Later that evening, Yoshida returns home and meets Kazuto, who then asks for a couple of minutes to talk. Yoshida joins Kazuto in a nearby park. Kazuto then offers him a drink and starts by apologizing for the way he spoke the first time they met. They proceed to spend a couple of minutes talking about the night Yoshida found Sayu, after which Kazuto decides to tell him why their mom seems to hate Sayu's guts. Their father built a super successful company many years ago, but around the time Sao was conceived, he found a younger Hati and fell in love with her. As a result, he told their mother to get rid of Sayu, but she refused, thinking that Sayu would remind their dad of the importance of family. Unfortunately, their dad couldn't care less and still chose to dump their mom for his new girl. So their mom began to treat Sao like she was the curse responsible for splitting up their family. After further explaining that Sao never got to experience real love and guidance from an adult, Kazuto thanks Yoshida again for keeping her safe all this time. He then asks Yoshida to keep looking out for her because she is going to need all the help she can get to face their mom again. A little while after this, Yoshida returns home and tells Sayu about the talk he just had with Kazuto. After saying that Kazuto was the only reason she endured their mom for that long, Sao tells Yoshida that she plans to go back, but only after she's taken the time to think about her life and what she plans to do with it. The following night, Sao prepares a recipe book packed with all the amazing dishes she made for him so that he won't have to go back to drinking beer like his life depended on it. A couple of days later, Hashimoto tries to get lunch with Yosha, but he declines, saying he needs to focus on work. However, the countless cans of energy drinks tell Hashimoto that something else is up, so he tries to convince Yoshida, but he still refuses. After Hashimoto leaves without him, Got also notices that Yosha has been drowning himself in more work than usual. Hours later, Sayu asks if he can follow her to a special place, and after he agrees, she takes him to the stargazing spot Asami showed her. As they both sit together, she tells him about the conversation she had with Asami that night. After suddenly grabbing Yoshida's hand, Sawu admits that she would rather continue staying with him than return home with Kazuto. She also reveals that she had tried to leave his place without telling him at several points during the week, but she could never bring herself to do it because she still can't imagine life without him. The next moment, she gets up to avoid the irresistible pull of his charm and says that she wants to show her mom and everyone else that meeting him really changed her life for the better. She then places his hand close to her heart and asks him to wish her luck. But at that moment, they both lose control of their emotions. On Sayu's last day with Yosha, Hashimoto quickly notices how upset he is and asks if he wants to take the rest of the day off to be with her, but Yosha claims he doesn't need it. Miss Heima then suggests that he follow her to her family home. And when Yoshida says that would be a weird thing to do, she asks why he is drawing the line at that after literally adopting her off the streets. Yoshida then says he needs to finish work, but Hashimoto offers to cover for him. After thinking of a new excuse, he tells them that Sawu needs to handle her problems alone, or she will never grow past them. Much later, Asami calls Yoshida to ask if he knows where Sawu is because she can't find her anywhere. Upon hearing this, Hashimoto tells Yosha to go find her, but he still hesitates. So Hashimoto tells Got that they are both sick and need to leave. After Got gives Hashimoto the green light, Yosha still hesitates and tries to use work as an excuse, but Miss Heima offers to cover for him. Minutes later, Hashimoto floors the gas pedal and completely ignores the speed limit. moment, while slowly getting pissed at Yoshida because he had barely said a word despite clearly being concerned for 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. Hashimoto then tells him to stop acting like he suddenly stopped caring, because his entire life over the last few months has revolved around 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. After reminding Yoshida of the time he warned him against getting attached to her, Hashimoto tells him to follow 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 back to Hokkaido because he won't be able to function properly without knowing if she is really safe. When Yoshida asks if they can handle the current project without him, Hashimoto tells him to focus on 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 first, because he will definitely be useless at the office if he keeps worrying about her. The next moment, they get calls from Asami and Got, and immediately head to Yoshida's place. Upon seeing 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, Yoshida immediately asks where she ran off to, so Got explains that she actually went to the office so they could walk home together, since it's her last day with him. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 then apologizes for causing everyone to worry, but they are all just happy that she is okay. Hours later, Yoshida tries to get some much-needed rest, but 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 suddenly asks to share the bed with him. Surprisingly, he agrees, but promises to kick her away if she throws her plots in his face. She agrees and joins him in bed, but after a couple more minutes, Yoshida realizes that she is nervous about leaving and offers to follow her to Hokkaido. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 gets shocked by this and refuses to believe him, but after he promises to help with her mom as well, she hugs and thanks him. The next morning, Asami gives 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 a goodbye hug and almost snaps her spine in half in the process. She then tells Yoshida to make sure he keeps his promise by protecting 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆, or she will crush his baby maker when he gets back. Much later, �ސu falls asleep on the plane, so Kazuto takes the opportunity to ask Yoshida why he decided to tag along. Yoshida then admits that he would have remained concerned if he let her go back alone, especially after everything he had heard about their mother. Upon hearing this, Kazuto tells him that their mother definitely won't believe that he just allowed a hottie like 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 to live with him for months without cracking. Just then, 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 wakes up and immediately checks for Yoshida, so Kazuto offers to help him with a parachute if he changes his mind about following them home. After laughing at Kazuto's first attempt at being funny, 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 starts checking out the plane seats like she has never seen them before. Yoshida then learns that this is actually her first time on a plane, so he asks if they have never gone on family trips. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 then says that their parents were never the traveling type, so they both spend the rest of the flight taking in the amazing views. Hours later, they land in Hokkaido, and Kazuto quickly calls a car to take them home, but he suddenly remembers an important task he has to complete at the company and says they will head straight home afterwards. Minutes later, Kazuto notices that 𝑠u has started feeling nervous again, so he tells her and Yoshida to spend some time touring the city. 𝑠u gets excited to hear this, and after getting to a cafe with Yoshida, she claims it's also her first time visiting one. Yoshida says the exact same thing, and while he starts looking for what to order, 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 looks out the window and spots two students who remind her of the relationship she had with Yuyuko. Yoshida eventually notices this and tries to distract her with small talk, but then she tells him that her mom always kept her indoors and claimed that was how everyone else her age lived. It was only after she ran away that she learned that going out with friends after school was a pretty normal thing to do. After she admits to feeling happy that she gets to visit her first cafe with him, Yoshida asks if she's scared to go back home. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 says yes, but also tells him that she will easily get through it as long as he's there to help her out. Much later, Kazuto shows up to take 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 home, but she wants to visit one more place before going to see her toxic mother. Just after dark, they end up at her school, and after realizing what 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 plans to do, Kazuto tries to stop her, but she insists that it's something she has to do. She then tells Yoshida to follow her, but after they sneak in through the fence, Yoshida remembers that he is a grown man and tells her that it's wrong to trespass. 𝑠u then asks where his sense of dignity was when he adopted her, so he stops trying to talk her out of it. Minutes after touring the school building, they get to a flight of stairs and Yoshida quickly realizes that it leads to the rooftop Yuyuko jumped from. After grabbing his hand for strength, 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 heads up, but they find the door locked, so 𝑠u decides to jump in from a window. As soon as she enters the rooftop, her anxiety kicks in, so she asks Yoshida for support, and he quickly jumps in to keep her safe. After he talks her down, she spots the bench she and Yuyuko always used during lunch and begins to doubt that she is ready to face what happened that day. However, thanks to Yoshida's support, she slowly walks over to the bench, only to suddenly drop after taking the last step. Concerned, Yoshida tries to help, but she stops him and claims to be okay, before suddenly running to the fence and blaming herself for what happened to Yuko. Yoshida immediately runs over and sees that she is hurting herself with the fence, so he pulls her away and says none of it was her fault. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 refuses to believe this, so he reminds her that none of this would have happened if the bullies had left Yuyuko alone. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆 then pulls away from him and says she is the reason Yuyuko became a target in the first place. Seeing that his words of encouragement are not working, Yoshida tells 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒆 that Yuyuko chose to be her friend because they really cared about each other while still bawling her eyes out. 𝑨𝒏𝒄𝒆 then admits that she felt betrayed by Yuyuko's actions. After she also says that feeling angry makes her a bad friend, Yoshida assures her that there's nothing wrong with being pissed at a friend who decided to leave her all alone in a world that hates her. He further explains that she needs to forgive herself and let go of the guilt, because wanting a friend doesn't make her a bad person. As he hugs her, she finally decides to let go of all the hurt and falls into his arms. Minutes later, Kazuto starts to wonder if they plan to spend the entire night up there. By then, 𝑠u Sue has stopped soaking Yoshida in tears, and after a couple of more minutes of talking, she gets up and takes one last look at the spot Yuko jumped from. As they start heading out, Yosha asks if she's finally over it, but Sao says she will use the pain to keep Yuyuko alive in her heart forever. Moments later, they meet up with Kazuto, and Sao says she is finally ready to go home. So they get in the car. However, when they get to the family house, Sue hesitates, so they give her a minute to get her mind right. Eventually, she summons enough courage to follow them inside, so Kazuto goes to find the mother. The next moment, Ojiwara walks straight to Sao and lands a brutal slap. She then demands to know where Sao has been this entire time, and claims her actions have brought a great deal of shame to the family. Kazuto stops her and introduces Yoshida as the knight in shining armor who kept Sue. However, Ojiwara doesn't want to hear another word and storms back inside. Minutes later, they all sit at the dinner table to talk, and after a crazy long period of silence, Ojiwara asks Sao what she wanted to accomplish by leaving home. Sao then says she has never even tried to understand what she is going through, and Ojiwara says it's because Sao never wants to tell her anything. When Sao asks Ojiwara if she recalls blaming her for what happened to Yuyuko, Ojiwara claims she already forgot about all that, and Sue says this is the exact reason she never talks to her. Pissed, Ojiwara asks if she ran away to draw attention to herself, and Sao replies that she did it to finally get away from her. While bawling her eyes out, despite seeing her runaway daughter in tears, Ojiwara insists that she was foolish to run away and stay with a random person. She then asks Sue why she brought Yosha along. So Sao explains that he is the only thing close to a mentally stable adult in her life. When Ojiwara tells Yoshida to mind his own business, Kazuto tries to stop her from being disrespectful, but she refuses to listen and asks Yoshida if he cracked Sayu. Kazuto tries to stop her again and almost gets smacked. So Yosha takes over and says he was fully aware of the risks when he chose to let Sayu live with him. Ojiwara then asks Kazuto why he allowed Japanese Kelly to follow them back, and Sue responds by slamming the table and cussing Ojiwara out for always attacking her friends, after she says Yosha is twice the adult she will ever be. Ojiwara also flips out and blames Sayu for making life incredibly hard for her and Kazuto. The next moment she says she regrets giving birth to Sayu, and as Sayu starts crying again, Yosha considers splitting Ojiwara's head open, but he controls his anger and finishes with his drink before telling her to chill out. After staying silent for a couple of minutes, Yosha tells Ojiwara that Sayu never had a choice about who would give birth to her. He then offers to take full custody if Ojiwara truly hates her as much as she claims. But after thinking about it for another minute, he admits that it would be wrong of him to assume full responsibility for her. After telling Ojiwara that she is the one meant to take care of Sao, Yoshida drops to his knees to beg her, and Kazuto also joins him while Sao tries to stop them. Ojiwara gets confused by this and suddenly starts crying before ordering them both to get out. Kazuto then asks for some space, so Yosha and Sayu head to the porch. Just then, Sue sees tears in Yoshida's eyes, so she asks if he is okay, and he admits that he never expected Ojiwara to be so vile. When she asks how she's okay, considering everything Ojiwara said in there, she reminds him of when she said his presence would help her get through it. After she also lets the tears flow, So thanks him for everything and says she felt relieved when he begged Ojiwara for her sake. Yoshida then says he probably said a little too much, which is why Ojiwara sent them out. But Sayu tells him not to worry about it and takes his hand. Minutes later, Kazuto comes out and says Ojiwara agreed to stop attacking Sayu as long as she promises to remain home, at least until her graduation. Sayu hesitates because Ojiwara has never been the type to stick to her words. But Kazuto assures her that this time will be different because no one has ever affected her the way Yosha did. Upon hearing this, Yoshida apologizes if he overstepped, but Kazuto tells him not to worry about it because even he could never get such a reaction out of Ojiwara. Kazuto then tells Yosha to spend the night, and after accepting, he asks to speak with Ojiwara again. Kazuto says it shouldn't be a problem since she seems to have calmed down a bit. So Yosha heads inside and starts by apologizing for the way he spoke. Ojiwara claims to be over it already, but asks if he truly didn't do anything with Sayu. After assuring her that nothing happened between them, she asks if he can talk to Sue as well, and Ojiwara accepts. She then tells him to focus on returning home so she can focus on her family. After their talk, Yoshida heads out and sees that Sayu also wants to have a few words with Ojiwara, so he wishes her luck. The moment she enters, Ojiwara prepares herself for another series of verbal assaults. But Sue drops to her knees and apologizes for all the pain she caused by running away. This causes Ojiwara to tear up again, but she stops herself from crying and refuses to apologize to Sayu because they have all been acting like she is some kind of lunatic. After Ojiwara admits that talking with Yoshida helped her learn a little about herself, Sao also gets emotional. Ojiwara then tells her to focus on getting her grades back up since she has missed an entire school year. Moments later, Yoshida sees Sayu at the door, smiling for the first time since they landed in Hokkaido. Afterwards, he tries to get some shut-eye, but Sao suddenly sneaks in and climbs into the bed. Yoshida moves a little to give her some space, but then she presses her melons into his chest and says it's a parting gift so he won't forget her after leaving tomorrow. After saying that she likes how everything with Ojiwara turned out, she asks if she can continue living with him, but he refuses and tells her to focus on her family. When Yosha suddenly turns to face her, Sayu gives him one last chance to smash and says it will be the perfect way to make their last night together a memorable one. However, Yosha still turns down her overused kitty and says he doesn't need backshots to remember her. Despite this, Sayu refuses to give up and asks if he wants to play with her melons instead. So Yosha decides to spend the night watching her to make sure she doesn't steal his VC card. The next day at the airport, Kazuto asks Sayu for a couple of minutes alone with Yoshida, and after she leaves, he gives Yoshida some money to make up for what he spent on the trip. After Yoshida refuses to accept it and tells him to get Saw some new clothes instead, Kazuto asks if he's in love with her. Yoshida then decides to explain how obsessed he is with older mommies, just to help Kazuto understand that he has never even thought about clapping Sayu. After saying that Saw could have really ended up in a tragic situation, Kazuto thanks Yoshida for everything again. He then wishes Yoshida luck with his life in Tokyo and tells him not to keep Sayu for too long before heading to the Kai. Moments later, Yoshida catches up to Sayu and she immediately asks what he was talking about with Kazuto. But Yosha is more curious about the fact that she is still in uniform. After saying that it's a secret, she asks if they can keep talking, but Yosha hears the boarding notice for his flight and realizes that he needs to go. As he turns to leave, Sayu explains that the uniform reminds her of the night he found her by the lamppost and saved her from the streets. After Yosha admits that he loved the time they spent together, Sayu suddenly confesses her love for him. Yoshida gets surprised and waits to hear her say it's a joke, but Sayu is dead serious, so he finally admits that he finds her attractive. However, since she is still not grown enough to handle his lightsaber, she asks if he will wait for a couple of years and consider giving her a shot. Yoshida pats her head and says it would be pointless because he would be much older by then, so she should just focus on herself. However, So takes his hand and promises to come find him even if he decides not to wait for her. When she starts crying again, he responds by laughing to ease the pain of separating from each other. Minutes later, he heads into the plane, so she meets up with Kazuto and says she will definitely see Yoshida again in the future. Much later, Yosha returns to his apartment and finds a note Sayu left on a shirt to make sure he never forgets her scent. He then takes a look at her recipe book and decides to see if he can make a decent meal without it, after the horrible taste of his soup causes him to drop a tear, right before he collapses and realizes that he misses Sayu even more. 2 years later at the office, Ms. Haima gives Yoshida a new project she just completed so he can take a look. Hashimoto then commends her on finally being good enough to lead an entire project on her own. After Yosha says it was all thanks to his guidance, Miss Haima calmly accepts instead of crashing out and even thanks him for all the help. God then suggests having a celebratory meal after work, but Yosha says she won't be able to make it after promising to drag him along for the next one. And God decides to go out with just Hashimoto and Miss Haima. Miss Haima then reminds Yoshida that he still owes her a date, while Hashimoto gets curious about all the time he started spending with Asami. Hours later, Yoshida heads out and sends Asami a text asking where she is. She then tells him to come to the usual spot, but at that moment, he sees Sayu under the lamppost and feels his heart glitch for a second. After getting his emotions under control, Yosha wipes his tears and walks over before telling her to go back home. However, Sayu says she can't go back and asks if she can stay at his place again. Since So can now take things to the next level with Yosha, will he accept her love or continue waiting for God to make her move? Comment part 2 to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.